In 2008, legendary actor, director, and producer Clint Eastwood crafted a postmodern meditation on faith, racial injustice, masculinity, and hubris. Today, a man newer to my life praises Eastwood's effort but doubts his intentions, and introduces a wacky cafe that is sure to please. This is the Being Real podcast. My name is Evan. Charles, it's time to Being Real. Hello and welcome to the Being Real podcast. Today, on this lovely day in late April, I am joined by Charles, which I understand is not your real name.
Yeah, this got let out a little while ago, and now people like to use that as secret information. I go by my middle name, Dylan, but ever since college, it was just easier to not correct everybody I went around, so Charles is fine.
Well, I met you because you work with my wife downtown in Pittsburgh, and I like to think that I was one of the first people to come to know your true name, and I feel very honored to be a part of that esteemed group of nurses that were let on early. Did it all happen at once, though, in your unit?
You know, honestly, I don't remember who first found out. I remember it being shocking to people. Like, why wouldn't you tell us? I'm like,
Yeah.
Sorry. But you would have been, one of the first people, to know.
How did it transform from Dylan to Charles? Was that a given nickname or a self-imposed one?
No, so I've always gone by my middle name. My parents just called me that. My dad's name is Charles.
Okay.
When I went to college, like I said, maybe it's just because I don't like conflict. I don't know. We'll go into my psyche here. I just didn't correct all my professors, and Charles just stuck into the workforce when I left college. So that's how we got here.
Would you describe yourself then as maybe a little reserved and or shy in that you just let your teachers steamroll over you?
Yeah, it's become kind of like an alter personality now, probably.
So is Charles your Slim Shady? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay,
and
perfect.
Dylan, I guess we'll just have to be Stan for now.
Well, I share that with you. Growing up, I have, like Walt in the movie we'll talk about, I have a very aggressively Polish last name. And it was very difficult for people to pronounce with the S and Z being in such close proximity. And rather than correct my teachers growing up and then my professors in college, they would say is that right? Did I get that right? And I would be like, yeah, that's fine. that works. whatever you want. Whatever you want me to be. So in a way, I think I let people steamroll over me, but I did it with a certain level of confidence too.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I think that's where I'm at now, that I've kind of owned it at this point and it doesn't bother me. Just that's where we're at.
I'm so glad that I found my people in you. Well, to be honest, Charles, I don't know you very well. On the podcast thus far, I've had a lot of close friends and family, but I've never had an acquaintance bordering on a possible good friend, let's say. Mm-hmm. I feel like we have quite a vibe together in these short moments we've shared. So, in my opinion, anyway, you don't have to echo agreement in that. But
I'll confirm. I'm thinking back to the Pins picture when we held the ball together.
Yes.
In the center as the centerpiece. It just kind of happened. It was like thunder meets lightning. So
I'm glad it felt natural for you as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, very.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, in this blooming friendship, this is a great opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. Is there anything you'd like to share a little bit about your life? You don't necessarily have to dive too deep into your career, or like you said, dive into your psyche. But maybe just a little bit about yourself, what you like to do.
Yeah, sure. So as you know, became a nurse out of college, my first job. I've worked with your wife for, I think, going on 7 years now, which is crazy to think about. Very blessed in that regard. I'm super glad to have met someone that I feel like shares a lot of the same hopes for the profession. I really don't feel like, though, I have to sell anything to you. I'm sure you already feel pretty greatly about her. So I'm very thankful to be able to work with her and all the other people that I work with. Work in the cardiac ICU, see a lot of very specialized patients, very sick patients. But as hard as it is, still a blessing to get to be able to help people. Outside of that, big nerd. Like reading, like sci-fi, Star Wars is my big, probably interest. Lord of the Rings, Japanese anime, manga, board games is also a big one. We've actually had a couple unit board game events. That's kind of me in a nutshell.
Again, you found your people here. I am very much a nerd at heart myself. I like all of those things, especially Star Wars. Although my relationship with that franchise has soured a little bit in recent years. But it's a very volatile community in general, so we don't have to go into that really. But I just want to let you know that we here at Being Real, we are a nerdy community, and we champion those people. So welcome, firstly, and anything like coming up or exciting in your life?
Well, my birthday is in 2 days.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you.
And we're going to have a little getaway, me and my wife. So that's probably the only big thing coming up here. Getting a roof on the house. I don't know that I'll celebrate that, but I'll feel relieved, I think, for all the shingles that have been falling on to our lawn. Yeah, that's about all I got going on right now.
Well, roofing isn't fun, but a weekend getaway sounds nice. Where are you guys going? What's the destination?
Deep Creek, Maryland.
Oh yeah,
been there a few times before. Yeah, lovely spot. Everything's close by, very quiet. Hiking, can go small beach, can go out on the lake. Hoping the weather holds up. It's supposed to. We have like notoriously bad luck on that end, but I'm hopeful.
something I've actually forgot about once again. That was a tradition in season one, was asking the guests what actor or actress do I remind them of. Something I've missed in the first two episodes of the second season, and in the sort of limited time that you've known me and met me in person, who do you think I am in the movie world?
Is this in general or in Gran Torino?
I mean, it's basically in general, but if you wanted to do it for Gran Torino, I would not be disappointed.
Oh boy, I feel like this is a tall ask here.
It could be a loaded gun, to be fair, but that's fine too.
Yeah,
like I've been compared to many actors and actresses in different movies, and they're not all in the greatest light, but they are uniquely them, and that's what matters most to me.
Okay, I'll shoot here from the hip. I'm going to say Christopher Walken. Can I give that? I feel because he's someone who, at face value, carries a very serious vibe. Underlying, hilarious guy. I love him whenever he does comedy. And you never know where he's going with something. I feel like it just happens.
I most recently reconnected with his work watching Severance. He's just, you're right. That's a great way of putting it. You never know what you're going to get from a Christopher Walken performance. He can be darkly cruel. He can be like shockingly mysterious, or he can really bring some comedic chops. I think we've seen that.
I got a fever.
I think most famously in his SNL episodes.
And the only prescription is more cowbell.
But he's just so great. I think he would just be a huge freaking dork in person, and just a total disregard for what other people think of me. That's the goal.
Yeah, that sort of self-confidence, I think, is what we should all aspire to be, honestly.
Because to be honest, Charles, I don't have that now. It wasn't so long ago that I was letting teachers pronounce my name as Shabalooski. So that's one that I actually like really appreciate. And you're right, that was a shoot from the hip. But I feel like the public opinion on Christopher Walken has always been great. So I'm happy to share a comparison to that esteemed actor. Awesome.
Nice. I'm glad I could bring that to the table.
Now, Charles, we'll segue or try to into the world of coffee. And like I told you before we started recording, we're just trying to plug in cafes that are near and dear to the heart of the guests. And just wondering what your heart lies with that.
Yeah, so we do have a local coffee shop that I'd like to give a shout out to. It's called Harvest Moon.
Ooh.
So the one that is close to us is actually the second location. They have two that I'm aware of. The first one was in Trenton, which is just like 5 minutes driving from us. But they opened this one up in the Natrona Heights Plaza, and cute little location. The decor is all looks kind of like hand-me-down and or salvaged pieces, but comfortable. They are just a small little coffee shop, like local coffee shop. They also make chocolate, so they have a lot of chocolates for sale as well. I'm not a coffee drinker. I just kind of suffer through life, but I do drink tea. So I get the London Fog there,
Ooh, nice.
which is, black tea, I think Earl Grey, and it has lavender, and they add vanilla because I'm spoiled and I want those things in my life.
I love a good London Fog tea, especially if it's over ice. I'll take it over ice mainly.
Mm-hmm.
But me and lavender have a very special relationship. One that's outside of the relationship with my wife. I do feel when I order at London Fog and essentially make out with my cup that I am being unfaithful to her.
I assume that everything that happens in the podcast stays in the podcast, right?
This episode, Charles, will get put out because my wife does not get special treatment in that I preview episodes for her. So when the news lands that I'm leaving her for London Fog, it will drop to her as it will everyone else.
Wow, I actually feel pretty privileged now. Being here before the anything hits. Wow. I've never been in that position, so
So Harvest Moon, not only is it like such a fantastical name for a cafe, but like what's the general vibe there as far as the aesthetics? Like is it like a 2008 Italian rustic where everything just looks heavy and warm, or is it like modern?
No, I'd put it probably more as, like I said, a lot of their decor is kind of like salvaged, almost like they went to Goodwill and pulled some of these pieces and threw it all together. It's not a lot of matching. Like a lot of the chairs are kind of like refurbished or saved pieces, but they're comfortable. Small tables that are like mismatched. It has a very laid back feel when you go in. A lot of people are just sitting in there doing work or just enjoying their coffee. It's quiet, like open windows up front so you get the light coming in. It's a nice spot to just sit and enjoy your day, honestly, on a nice day or even a rainy day.
It sounds like a real cacophony of vibes is what you're telling me. I mean, similarly, there was a bar that I used to like to go to in college in my hometown in Erie, Pennsylvania. It was called Park Place, and they sort of had a similar thing where it's just everything, like you said, is mismatched and sourced from different places that don't necessarily give off, in this case, a bar. Like, for instance, they had like an old mannequin that they just put on the top of the liquor cabinet sitting there. And there was like random like live, laugh, love signs next to like an old like emo tour poster. And it was like, I don't know what's happening here. But there's many things to be like interested by. It's one of those. It's like a museum of just mashup museum. I don't know. It's cool. I like that vibe.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a mannequin, and a live, laugh, love in your room, are you really even doing life
No,
right? I feel like that's just necessary if you want to achieve nirvana.
the highest state. Awesome. So, is there anything else that you like to get from there, or maybe that she likes to get there?
Yeah, they have a lot of baked goods as well. Zucchini bread, chocolate bread. They have a little kind of almost looks like a wedge or something you would get from a pizza place, but they call them hand pies. Uh, and they have different breakfast ones that you can get. All I would recommend. Everything is excellent there. It's a nice spot if you're like just running before work or something to get breakfast on the go.
And is it reasonably priced? Like Charles, like these days, it's not unexpected to pay $7 for a cup of coffee. Where are we landing at here at price points?
Oof, honestly, so I pay, but I don't look when Sarah orders. uh, I,
Hand the card
she
over,
has the
but looking
rewards
away.
card. As you do in life, right? That's just kind of how. Sarah has the rewards card, so she handles the actual numbers of it, and I just assume that I can survive whatever blow I'm about to take. But no, I think it's reasonably priced. I don't have specific numbers on hand. I'll have to get back to you on
That's
that,
fine.
but I've never gone broke after.
Perfect.
Never regretted it.
Well, I like the whole rewards programs at cafes. A couple coffee shops local to me have those like stamp cards, where after like 5 to 10 stamps, you get, I think it's like 10, you get like a free coffee or beverage of your choosing. I like that because I go with every intention to collect stamps on my card every time, but in reality, they end up in the washer and possibly the dryer, where I can't ever use them again. Or maybe they're just gone in the wind, and then I come back and I'm like patting my wallet and my pockets, like, yeah, where is that stamp card? And inevitably, I just have to start over again. So, in the few times I've gone in the past month, I am at 0 cups of coffee. I do not take advantage of those stamp programs, and I hope other people can share that with me.
I have to say it's like looking in a mirror right now because
Do you like what
I
you
feel
see?
everything you're saying. Yeah.
Again, I'm glad I found my people in you, Charles. Sometimes I do feel like I'm talking to the walls and it's reverberating back onto me, and it is what it is.
Listen, I'm here for it. I'm psyched to be here. I'm thankful. This is an awesome passion to dive into. Really curious when Katie brought it up, so I'm happy that you asked me to be here.
Well, in the movie we'll talk about, Charles, our character, played by Clint Eastwood, also directing and producing the film, is also looking for his peoples. And maybe he finds them in unexpected places, like next door, moving into his home. So you picked the 2008 movie, Gran Torino. Didn't expect to go in this direction, Charles. Actually, I don't know what I was expecting from you. Before we get into little tidbits about the movie and its history, and what made you land on this one?
So a lot of my favorite movies, when you ask, are longer movies. My mind went first to Saving Private Ryan. It's like what 3 hour movie or more. I'm like I don't really want to put anyone through picking apart like the history of World War II and, and where we're going with this movie. Gran Torino, I just think is a movie. One is probably pretty relatable to the times right now. It's not like aged in any way that I don't think people could relate. It has a
Sure.
big emotional piece to it. Also has like a lot of dark elements and comedy too. So it's pretty multifaceted as far as movies go. You're getting a lot for what Clint Eastwood gives you here. Um, and I just like the story, honestly. I like kind of the sort of redemption we
Hmm.
see in the movie. I guess I'll call it that for now.
Yeah.
That's probably arguable,
Yeah,
but
maybe. But I mean, I guess I'm trying to key in on that feeling. I feel like it is heartwarming in many spots, and then it gets very profound near the end, where I think the movie moves from a very slice of life pace into a frantic ending that it just, I mean, it's powerful. It really is powerful, but maybe not for all the right reasons at all times, right? I don't know.
yeah,
Regardless, it's again a 2008 film produced by, directed by, and starring Clint Eastwood, who's like now 94 years old. And he looks 94 in this movie. So it does feature what's really, I think, a big draw here for a lot of people back then, maybe even now, is that it featured a significant Hmong American cast, which was, I mean, really a first. I don't think I've ever seen something like that before. Um,
I honestly wasn't even aware of who these people as a people were.
they do their best to introduce it here and there. Looking into a little bit of the research, I don't know if it's all accurate, and a lot of it may be exaggerated. But I do appreciate when movies do showcase parts of that maybe that the audience is unaware of. In particular, what's cool is they used a lot of Hmong crew, PAs, consultants, and of course many extras in the movie, which is nice to see. The movie's set in Highland Park, Michigan. I think it's like a suburb of Detroit, and we follow Walt Kowalski, the Polak, played by Clint Eastwood. He's recently widowed. He's a Korean War vet, and now he's a neighbor to the Hmong family that moves in. And one of the family members, a young boy named Tao, is kind of coerced by his cousin Spider, is his name, his gang, to pressured into stealing his 1972 Ford Torino for the gang initiation. But Walt ultimately thwarts that attempt early on in the film and subsequently develops a relationship with Tao and his family. So the film was written by Nicholas Shank, who would later work with Eastwood on films like The Mule, Cry Macho, and he did some writing for a popular show I think some people would know, Narcos.
Hmm.
And so originally the film wasn't set in Detroit. It was actually set in Minnesota. The writer Schenck had become acquainted with the history and culture of the Hmong while working alongside in a factory in Minnesota. He learned about their culture and how they had sided with the South Vietnamese forces and its U.S. allies during Vietnam, only to wind up as refugees at the mercy of the North Vietnamese. Um, of course, when the U.S. troops pulled out and the government forces were defeated, they were kind of left stranded and unimaginably weak, maybe motivating some of them moving to the United States, like the family we see depicted here in the film. So, coming off that short history and some of the story, more of a synopsis, where do you want to land on with this movie first? I think we could maybe take a look at some of the characters or the actors and actresses and their performances. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that's fair is to take maybe a first look at some of the characters that we're going to see throughout this film and just kind of take a quick glance at all them.
Okay.
And I'll even open up because one of my favorite characters in this, maybe for all the wrong reasons, is the priest in this. And every time I see this movie, I just have to think like, wow, this had to be a hard sell, or was this guy like really looking for work? Because I feel like he's just the whipping boy of this
Oh,
movie.
absolutely.
He maybe gets like a one respectable moment towards the end I can throw that way, but otherwise he's just kind of like a joke. I feel like throughout this whole
He's
film.
definitely played as, or especially early on, let's say, very early on, he's played as um, he's basically Walt's target practice. I mean, for all of his pent up frustrations and anger, maybe specifically related to the death of his wife, who was a devout, maybe Christian or Catholic.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I think he serves as a vehicle for Walt's, not only his exploration of his faith, but also coming to terms with all of the past trauma and inability to move past his own pride, all the way coming to the point where we meet Walt in the film. So he has a big task here, honestly. And as Walt says, he's only really a young man. Um, he's not the seasoned veteran priest that you'd find in other movies trying to impart his wisdom. He's coming from a different place than Walt, not only in his age but his walk of life. What did you like about the character?
I feel so. I guess I can say I can maybe identify, or at least I used to be able to identify a little bit with his position, right? So, whenever, and I'm sure I would venture the guess, you probably as well, when you're a baby nurse and you go into a room and you're like, hey, Mr. Mrs. So and so, like, I'm going to do this. And they're like, are you even out of college? Are you in
Yeah.
high
Oh
school?
yeah.
And you're like trying to teach them how to change their life and give them life advice. And, they've lived like three times as long as you. It's a tall order. It's a tall order to kind of put yourself forward and make yourself an authority figure, but that's your job at the same time. So you kind of have to wrestle with that. There's a lot to bring together between those two aspects of a person: your actual age and experience, and what you're meant to do in your profession or vocation.
I love, like, despite the back and forths that Walt has with Father Yanovich, that you know, early on, it comes from a struggle that Walt did not share a strong faith as his wife did. And maybe if I'm gonna impart my own like experience with the film on this, maybe he just doesn't believe in a higher faith after everything he's seen during his time in the Korean War.
Hmm.
So there's that at play as well. And he kind of makes fun of Father Yanovich, as we've alluded to. Like, he'll call him Padre instead of Father. And as he does it, you can tell they're just not jiving. They are not on similar common ground. But I do like the times where things open up and Father Yanovich attempts to maybe open up the conversation and dive a little bit deeper into Walt. And you can kind of see maybe both anger, but also light bulbs going off in Walt's head as he also starts contemplating his life, and his outlook. Um, and in those moments, those small moments, he calls him father instead of padre. And you can tell there's genuine connection there when he does that. So I appreciated those small moments. Um, what do you think is the larger conflict between Walt and Father Yanovich here?
So for starters, I kind of see in Walt. I'll like into my grandparents. My grandfather was Catholic and raised Catholic, and my grandmother was not. And she really didn't believe per se. Maybe she was Christian, but maybe didn't believe in all of the tradition of
Mm-hmm.
Catholicism. But she went because of my grandfather. And so the vibe that I get from Walt throughout this movie is kind of that. It's kind of reversed, but that like he was there, but it was because of his wife. Maybe he wasn't raised Catholic, or maybe, like you said, he just through life experience kind of lost that. Because Catholicism is very traditional, right? It's very
Sure.
rigid, and you have to believe to want to be part of such a rigid and kind of laid out tradition. And I think he just didn't. He's just not there for it. And here you have this kind of young upstart priest who wants to be there for him, probably wants to be the best priest he can be, and is very idealistic, and that's just clashing.
Yeah.
I don't know that he can understand where Walt is coming
Hmm.
from, being so new to this and not understanding probably like what war has done and just life in general to Walt. Because that's pretty jarring when you meet your first person that's like that bitter and jaded,
Oh,
right?
for sure. I mean, if we can take both these characters together just to pan them out, I think, in some ways they're really foils to each other. He's young, he's old, he's crotchety, he's kind, like you just kind of have these stark differences between the two. And the movie just keeps on pounding them into the audience to just say like, hey, this is how we're going to extrapolate the inner workings of both these characters by pitting them against one another. Walt, like we've talked about, he's crotchety. He's kind of pushed his family aside. I think a lot of his hubris has done that to himself. I think he is obviously a very masculine character, and he treats Father Yanovich the exact opposite. He's not one of the men. He may be a man of God, but he's not. He's not one of the dudes. And
Mm-hmm.
I like the way they pit them up themselves up against each other, because it really shows a lot of their true colors and intentions. I think Walt's trying to strip everything down. I mean, strip everybody's intentions to help him, save him, fix him away. And Father Yanovich is trying to dissect, investigate, and uplift in his own way. And I like how that plays out.
Yeah, I think you can, kind of to what you were saying, I think you see growth on both sides, right? It's not just a one-way relationship where Father Yanovich is fixing Walt or Walt is just kind of pushing Father Yanovich one way or the other to grow as a person. You're seeing that in both sides where as the movie progresses, Father Yanovich becomes a little more gritty, I guess, in his personality, a little more forceful in what he's trying to get
Mm-hmm.
done. He kind of, I think, becomes a little more man-like, as Walt would probably put it, and Walt kind of softens a bit throughout on the other side. So they're kind of meeting in the middle, I feel like, as this movie goes through. You don't just see it one way or the other with these rigid characters. And that's interesting to me. I kind of like that development.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in the beginning of in the beginning of their relationship, Father Yanovich is persistent, trying to get in touch with Walt and trying to help him. And they meet at a local bar, and Walt asks him if he wants a beer, because Walt is a avid drinker, as we find out through all the Pabst cans that are littered throughout his front porch. And Father Yanovich says, "No, I'll have a Diet Coke or whatever it is." And he eventually convinces Father Yanovich, but we see a reversal in that quiet, dark scene after Spider and his gang have shot up the Mong's house. And I should say that I think they're the Vanglors is who the family is, and also
Yes, yeah.
violently abuse and rape Sue, played by Ani Air, I think is how you pronounce it. Not completely sure, but when they have that quiet moment with one another, where Walt finds their house shot up, but also discovers that's when Sue comes back into the house and she's been abused after Walt has taken a stand against the gang. He feels responsible, but Father Yanovich also is horrified by what he sees, and it's the first look into the other side of Father Yanovich's humanity, of like anger, frustration, near hatred, where they find this common ground together and they both share a beer. Where Father Yanovich says, "No, I would love one." And we see them kind of come together in their own way finally. Do you want to move on into? There's a couple others that I want to talk about, which would be actor B. Vang as Tao, or as Walt refers to him as Toad.
Toad, yeah. Mm-hmm.
As playing Sue in the movie. What did you think of these two performances in the movie?
I enjoyed both. I think they both played their roles really well. I think Sue in this film is, and Tao kind of mentions this to Walt at one point, that the Hmong men don't do well, but the women go to school, go to college, and get
Hmm.
jobs. For those that have relocated to America, to the U.S. or Canada, and I think she like plays that very well. She's headstrong. She is able to befriend Walt. She's, I think, the first person to kind of really break through his barriers that we see in the film, and she kind of hits him with the same sass that he's throwing, minus the
Yeah.
racism, maybe. And kind of gets through to him, and that's she's probably the first character you kind of see him sort of respect too. I feel like that he didn't already maybe respect in
For
some
sure.
way. So I really appreciated her performance. I think she kind of dwindles in presence towards the end of it. She's
Sure.
still there. I think she more drives the plot though, rather than being like an active presence. With Tao, I think, he also plays, and I didn't, so I had to look up a little about the Hmong people, and they're, I think, Confucius. What's the
Oh, the
the
religion.
religion?
Yeah.
How do I want to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, Confucianism.
They have their
I
own.
think
They have their
I
own
might be
shaman.
butchering that.
Who is there for
Yes,
very important moments in the family's life.
I know that it's similar to like some Chinese traditions, as that's where they're kind of native to, but they're distinct. But they're very patriarchal, and you kind of see that in the start of the movie with them saying he's doing dishes, he's doing women's work, and that's kind of gets repeated throughout with gardening and different things. Um, and he keeps his eyes down, he looks down. He doesn't have a lot of charisma. He's not a lot of presence in the beginning, and then he grows as a person throughout. So I think he does a great job as
Hmm.
well, like developing those bonds with Walt, growing as a person, becoming a presence. He kind of, I guess, maybe does the reverse of what I see kind of in Sue, where he goes from just kind of being there and driving plot to actually becoming a character that you're following. Not that I dislike Sue at all.
Yeah.
I just think she
Well,
wasn't really
this is a
as
very
much there.
character-driven story, and the narrative focuses on Tao and Walt or Wally, and these two characters specifically. I think Sue is such a charming character, full of life, and it only horrifies us more as an audience when we see her violently beaten and raped. And I think Ani gives an incredible performance as a traumatized woman in that situation. I just
Hmm.
wish the narrative would have allowed her to explore that a little bit more, and
Hmm.
she wouldn't be such an afterthought when Walt does try to take his own justice. And on the other hand, Tao, I think he does play perfectly into a outcast, especially outside of his family, and maybe not wanting to be in the gang, not wanting to be a part of the violence, and just kind of living life on the outskirts as a wallflower, as we see in that one scene where the younger Hmong family members and friends are in the basement hanging out as kids. And he's just kind of posted up against the wall until Walt knocks some sense into him and motivates him to, quote, be a man. But what he means is just be involved and say yes to these opportunities. So I think he plays that pitch perfect. But just to key on something, I think the two the actors share is that they kind of give some wooden performances in spots where you can tell maybe they're they're new to this career, or they don't have much experience, or maybe they're not getting the direction they need from Eastwood, who famously likes to just send his actors and actresses out there and let them do whatever they want without any intervention. So I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but
I mean, this was the acting debut, I think, for Annie and
oh
Spider's
wow,
character as well, actor, I think, for the both of them. I don't believe it was for Talek Vang, I believe his name
Yvonne,
is.
yeah.
Uh, Vong, yes. But for the other two, I think this was their acting debut. Yeah.
And I mean, they have to balance, and the script also has to balance as well, all of these, like we talked about before we hopped on, slurs being thrown at them by Walt, and just Walt being so dismissive towards their culture at large. And it asks them to take it all in stride, because maybe the actors and actresses and the writer knew that that's kind of what they've had to do since embarking to the United States. They're not in a position to stand up and fight back, and they take the high road whether they want to or not. And we see that here, where they just let Walt's insults roll off and they decide to lead with love, and that's not an easy thing.
Yeah, that's interesting too to me because this movie's about perspective, right? This is very Walt centric. The story of this is told by, and I think the danger that this plot runs is that like it kind of has that white savior complex a little bit
Hmm.
to it. You can argue that they also save him in a way, but he kind of comes in and fixes everything. He's fixing up the whole neighborhood. He's making Tao a better person. He maybe learns a lesson in this towards the end. That's again arguable. I don't know that he's fixed himself as a person. He's just accepted a group of people from the many that he's probably prejudiced against. So it is interesting when you say they have to kind of just accept him, the actors and actresses, throwing these slurs, being dismissive, and then just roll with it. That's kind of a hard place to imagine myself. How would I feel about that? And I don't know how they feel they were represented in this movie. Honestly, was it accurate? Was it not? I'm not sure. I've not seen anything specifically mentioned from them, like in any interviews or anything to that effect.
Well, I did some research, and I think there was some outcries that while certain things like bringing food to people that they want to honor and respect and thank is accurate, it's just done up to 11, right? Maybe not
Mhm.
so much that they're like bringing a whole party and van of people to deliver him food for the next 3 months. It's just more like something small. So I just think it was played up to be to a more comedic effect, but not exactly accurate. And I like that you did point out too that like this is Walt centric. This movie does kind of lean into the territory of white savior, where Walt learns his lessons. He champions a different culture, maybe in the name of who knows, diversity, who like inclusion. I don't know what it necessarily wants to say, but I do know that most glaringly, like especially at the final moments where Walt sacrifices himself and gets shot up by Spider and his gang, he's laying there on the ground, and I'm like, Clint Eastwood just hits you over the head with, oh, he's laying there like a crucified Jesus. Like, give me a break. give me,
Hmm.
give me a
Yeah,
break, Clint. Come on.
the pose, yeah, the pose is pretty telltale there. It's pretty on the
Yeah,
nose.
it's a little too on the nose. And I mean, I know he wanted it to be artful, but it just feels cheap and a little unearned in a way.
Mhm. He's a bitter old
Hmm.
man, right? Uh, I feel like Clint Eastwood just walked into the studio with this and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna be me and bitter and old and racist, and we're just gonna make this movie, and you're still gonna love me. I'm like gonna act my way through it." And the
Yeah.
studio's just like, "Okay, we'll see how this
He's going to
plays
deliver a
out."
classic, scary
Yeah,
Eastwood performance where you see him towering over another individual in the movie and just basically growling.
you gotta wonder like how hard it is to keep a scowl for that long in a movie, like almost 2 hours of scowling.
I feel like he does.
is
He does a
impressive.
lot of facial exercises in between takes, and maybe his whole life, maybe a part of his exercise routine is just making scrunches to himself in the mirror. And also, like, how do you get to a point of having a voice with that much gruff? Like, he's got to be chain smoking for at least 30 years plus.
Oh, I'd have to assume. Yeah, he's He's Dirty Harry. Yeah, it just goes with it. And he, I think, wants to go out, live by the sword, die by the sword, the way he's always known. And I think that's kind of why. And is the relationship with Tao real? Yes, and he's helped him as a person. But I see this as a selfish. He's kind of already put the family in this position with his intervention, right? You could argue he's saved them from the gangs at points, but him going and beating the one smaller, shorter guy, I could argue that he made things worse with that action. That's when they really start to ramp up and retaliate, and they shoot up the house. So he has created this situation to an extent. And what would it be like without his intervention? I don't know, but he did intervene, and this is where we're at. So him locking Tao up and going off to go die and kind of like go to Valhalla, in my mind, is more of like a selfish action if you look at it that way. So I think there's multiple perspectives to this movie. I don't think it's so cut and dry.
Charles, I think this is a good place to put a pin on the conversation, and we could take a quick break. When we come back,
Okay.
I have a question for you when we come back. Well, a decision really that you have to make if you're interested.
Oh, wow. I have time to waffle then. Okay. All right.
Perfect. Okay. We'll be back. And we are back talking about the 2008 white savior film, Gran Torino, from back in 2008. So Charles and I, during the break, we were talking a little bit about our bathroom breaks before we stumbled on into a discussion about our favorite cars. Charles, this movie so prominently features the 1972 Torino at every corner, but I want to know if you had to drive any car, maybe during a getaway or, on your way to work, what would you be driving ideally?
Well, this is a good question. So I would go with, have you ever seen the series Supernatural?
No, I haven't.
So long-running series with Jensen Ackles and, I'm forgetting Sam Winchester's name, Jared Padalecki. They're basically like demon hunters.
I know what show you're talking about, though.
Yeah. They drive an Impala.
Okay.
In it, and beautiful car. It is a 1967 Chevy Impala, nicknamed the Baby. And that would probably be my go-to car.
That's a low rider. That's a low rider.
It's a pretty looking car. I think between the show, I'm a big fan of the show. Between the show and just it looking beautiful, that would be my go-to.
If I were to choose a car as my daily, and if we weren't living in Pennsylvania where it snows most of the year, I'd probably go classic Americana, just something I could lay back and ride in, because some of my favorite times being in a car is just being on the open road at sunset with the windows down and my music up. And not necessarily racing or, being in a big truck so I can look more privileged than everybody else. But I would see myself classic Americana, 1965 Ford Mustang fastback, hardtop, of course. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's where I would go.
Solid choice. The picture you paint too is wonderful. Points for style. I'll give it to you.
I'd have to be listening to Sailing by Christopher Cross too. That's also my stipulation. If someone were to gift me that car, let's say.
This feels like you've really thought this out. Is this like...
I have Charles, I have a 10-year plan.
I like where it ends. I'll just say that. I hope you get there.
People say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I say, in 10 years, I see myself in a hardtop Mustang listening to Sailing.
I feel like this is the perfect interview answer. Like you're trying for the job. They're like, oh, where are you in 10 years? You give this whole this whole piece to them.
This whole thing right now, since we got back from break, has been basically one big lob for myself. So when I listen back to it, I can continue inspiring myself.
I'd give you the job. I'll leave it at that. I'd give you the job.
So I would like Charles to invite you to, this is new to season 2. It's a game called This or That, keeping in line with the Pittsburgh This and That. It's essentially a would you rather, kind of detailed off the movie that the guest brings onto the show. You have 2 options. Charles, would you rather, hypothetically of course, date a girl whose father is none other than Wally, but this is specifically the Wally pre-coming to Jesus moment? or would you rather take on a rival gang with your only companion being none other than Trey, played by Scott Eastwood, by your side?
Wow. Oof.
As a side note, I just love that Clint Eastwood called his son a pussy in the movie. That had to be like on the top of the list for the shooting that day. Like, all right, Clint's going to call his son a pussy in 5.
You got to wonder, if there's some deeper motivations going on there, that there's some things that maybe we're not privy to. Because I don't think he's even billed as Eastwood in that. I think he has his own name. Yeah, I don't think he was acknowledged until like 2006 or 7, something like that. So there might be some more going on there behind the curtains that we're not privy to.
Crazy.
Boy, okay. So I can either have to deal with my in-law being Clint Eastwood.
Being racist Wally, prejudiced Wally. Or you can take on Spider and his rice burner crew. With Trey. The aggressively white boy pretending to be East Side.
I mean, I feel like both are a death sentence. This is kind of me choosing my out, right? Let me think. Well, I'm gonna have to go, I think. Wow, this is catching me up more than I thought it would.
I mean, so on one hand, you have Wally, who has he has multiple firearms in his home, ready to meet you if you were to hypothetically screw things over with his non-existent daughter. But in the story, she exists, and you are at the mercy of Wally. On the other hand, I mean, I don't know if a straight confrontation with Trey would be successful. Like, there's multiple people in Spider's crew.
There's an added layer to this that I want to throw out to the listeners that they may not be aware of. I'm of the darker persuasion in terms of skin tone, so that also adds an element of, I don't think I'm going to get along with pre-come to Jesus Walt. So, I think both of these end the same for me, to be honest. Yeah, I have to go with Trey, I think. Maybe I can make something of him.
You might have a fighting chance with
he
Trey.
didn't run. He didn't run. In his defense, he stayed. He could have taken off. They gave him that opportunity, and he didn't leave Sue. So there's something there.
One Walt had Spider's crew stepping down. And he was about almost 80-some-year-old man. So I don't know if Spider and his gang are worth their salt other than getting cheap shots in. You know what I mean?
And I've got to say, Walt is almost a little bit superhuman here, right? Because, man's pushing 90. I thought, realistically, I think the fall that he takes when Tao is trying to steal the Gran Torino would have ended him. For any normal person of his age, like hip gone, that's it. Like this guy's done. And he just gets up after firing off his M1 Grand and repairs his windows in time.
There's got to be something going on with his psyche, because he's punching his cabinet windows in the house and he's bleeding from his knuckles, but he's still going to have a beer at the end of the day. There's something not right with Walt. We kind of know what that is, but I wouldn't mess with him. So I think you have every right in choosing Trey as your companion. But at the same time, I will say to your larger point here about you don't know if Walt can actually stack up to all these different opponents. My mind was changed because I was thinking the same as you. How is he doing this? And I looked at the film poster for Gran Torino. Clint is kind of jacked in that
Yeah.
film
Oh,
poster
yeah.
for 70. Like he worked on his triceps for this movie. You can see it.
Oh, definitely. When he's pulling the freezer up the stairs.
He's acting to his fullest extent because Clint Eastwood could pull that freezer up the stairs. Like that is acting, baby.
Yeah, I mean, it gives me pause in this scenario. I don't know that I want to take that on. I just don't know what he's capable of.
Okay. And you're right. He is a little bit of a wild card, as proven through the movie. So, okay. Charles is taking Trey to take on the multiple Detroit gangs. More power to you, Charles. Best of luck. As we were kind of finishing off before the break, we were talking a little bit about the larger messages here in the film. I have a couple, and I think I'd like to open with one to see how you feel, if that was any message that you got while watching the film. The first being Walt's hubris here. In classic tales leads to one's downfall. I feel like it's pretty crucial here. I think that, he's depicted as isolated. Walt trusts nobody. No one can get too close. And he even keeps, the Hmong children at arm's length, responding with disdain, avoidance, and he even tries to boost his masculinity to a level where he's putting off what we assume to be lung cancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he can't even bring himself to share that diagnosis with his son over the phone. To do so would almost, require way too much vulnerability from him in his mind. So when he comes back and he tries to sort out Spider's gang with intimidation, the gang ultimately responds to that, like we talked about before the great break. He's too proud of himself to seek out the help of the police, as Father Yanovich implored him to do. So to make up for his mistake, that pride and confidence leads to his downfall, and he sacrifices himself. However, nothing can really undo the harm done to everybody involved. What's your thought about Walt's pride here getting in his way?
Yeah, so I think that's probably definitely his sin, his first and foremost is pride. I see him throughout the movie as being someone that has this feeling of I'm too far gone, right? Like I have gone through war and I've committed so many sins that this is what I am and I can't be redeemed. And I think in the moments that he's meeting the Hmong people, the Vangloor family, he's seeing moments of life that he didn't think he could experience because he had already lost that with his family.
Sure.
But he doesn't lose all of that pride, right? He doesn't completely remake himself. He just kind of has a taste of what could have been. And then I think he kind of sees himself ruining that too with his nature, with going and fighting Spider's friends and amping up escalating this violence.
So in that way, you think that he's long gone and that he's basically already given up on himself even before the film begins?
I think so. I think that's how he sees himself. I think that's what drives his interaction with Father Yanovich. I think that's in his general interactions with people. I think he's just someone that he feels is not worth other people's time at this point. Or decent people, I suppose. He's not decent company, right? He says it at one point to Tal, his soul is stained, and
Sure.
Tal shouldn't want that on himself. So he thinks he's beyond saving, he's going to martyr himself, and that's his pride talking, and he can't let that go throughout the movie. He doesn't let that go. He may grow as a person, but, his root soul, himself is still there.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, he finds himself to be unredeemable throughout most of the film. And that really awakened some of those understandings in my first watch of the movie. Is that, yeah, he doesn't necessarily want to be saved. Seen throughout every discussion he has with not only Father Yanovich, but also putting himself at risk each and every time throughout the movie. And I guess tied to that, I do have another message, but one that kind of just popped in that I like to mention before opening up the floor for you is that, masculinity is a big part of this movie too. We see the film show the lighter side of Walt, like he's working with tools in his garage. Like his garage looks like a museum to Black and Decker and Milwaukee. Like it's insane. But it's something that I think in my life I've seen old men gear toward is fixing things as a way of making themselves feel proficient and as a sort of a status symbol that I've grown this and I've amassed this collection of tools because I can help people and I can do things. And, he has such a fixation on maintaining his property and the property of the neighborhoods around. I mean, the houses are in his neighborhood when he, eventually agrees to allow Tao to be, I guess we can say, employed by him. And there's always this, like, he has this affection for crudeness between him and other men. I'm thinking specifically to the interactions with him and his barber, played by John Carroll Lynch, where they just open up with calling each other like very, very culturally inappropriate names. Like obviously the barber calling him a Polak and, just back and forth, which also plays into one of my favorite scenes in the movie with Tao trying to emulate that. And Clint trying to, in his own weird way, make him into a man. But there's always, there's also those attempts, from Tao to emulate Walt's casually racist and belittling language. I think maybe on the flip side of things, it doesn't necessarily champion these masculine traits in the movie, but maybe it kind of just spins it on its head and showing how it's just largely a social performative habit that some men partake in to say, I'm one of the guys, and really it's at best a way into a community, but at worst and oftentimes it's just downright misguided. What's your thoughts on the masculinity playing in this movie?
Oh yeah. So this is one of the themes of the movie that I don't appreciate. It is there. I totally agree with you. This masculinity to me is toxic masculinity, right? This is
for sure.
This is like guy talk that you don't want to be a part of. It's not really guy talk. It's just racism or exclusionary, and you want to be part of the in group. No different than like hazing. Has gone out of style for fraternities. I think it's kind of like the same mindset of what this grouping that he's trying to pull Tao into is. Oh boy, where do I go with this? Part of why I don't like this theme is because there's no repercussions for this, right? Like this just works in the movie. Like he starts acting like Tao, and he gets a job. His life improves by emulating these sorts of behaviors, and there's no backlash to this. He just becomes a better person. And it's kind of funny because there's this cultural division where the Hmong people also have a patriarchal society. So there's kind of like a guys club there as well, right? But that's painted as bad because they're putting Tao down the whole movie, right? Gardening is for women, dishes are for women. They're doing the exact same thing, just in a different setting.
Right.
And it's wrong there, but it works when Walt takes him to do all these things and kind of lifts him up. So I don't know if this is saying, the American way is better, there's even kind of like a small allusion to this, I think, whenever Sue is talking to him at the barbecue and says, our dad was very traditional. And Walt says, I'm traditional. And she says, yeah, but you're American. And there's like no follow up to that, what that specifically means. She just kind of shrugs her shoulders when he asks, what do you mean? So I'm not quite sure if that's what they're getting at here, is that like, you know, he's like traditional American and that's the right way to do things, or there's just nothing in this movie that's telling me like he was wrong necessarily for being this way. And he doesn't really grow from it, right? He gets closer to this family and he helps some of the neighborhood people, but we don't see him like realize he's been wrong at all throughout his life. You know, besides that.
I think, you know, my opinion that I've formed on this area in the movie is that I think the movie understands that America is rooted in deep prejudice, always has been since its inception, with the multiple clashing cultures, but also the profound racism that we've seen against, let's say, the Black community before the Civil Rights Movement. And even today we see now with some marginalized communities as well, unfortunately. And I don't know if it wants to say anything about it. It just kind of wants to laugh at, make comedy of how these people operate, who have these prejudices and walk in the world without any regard for other ways of life and other opinions. And should it have to say anything? No, but at the same time, like you pointed out, like clearly by giving into it, Tao is rewarded. And that's not exactly a message that you want anyone taking. So yeah, I think it was probably, I don't know if their social commentary was appropriate, and I think it's pretty misguided. But I'm not gonna lie, I did have to laugh at some scenes, to be completely honest. But that's only because of my philosophy that I formed over the years about toxic masculinity.
So I feel the same. I think I see it's there, and you know, in the back of your head you feel it's wrong. Do I still love this story? Yes. Do I think this is great storytelling? Yes, 100%. I think it's undeniable. Clint Eastwood is a great actor and an incredible director. This is a good story, and it's a feel-good, not feel-good, it's emotional, it's impactful, the story. You get a lot from this. Are all the messages great? No, and you have to do your own analyzing there and kind of decide what you want to take home from this. All in all, the toxic masculinity, like you said, I've been there, I've seen it. I know I don't want to be a part of that, but can I chuckle at some of the things they said? Have I heard that stuff before? Yes. Yeah, I can enjoy those moments still, you know, and still remove myself from that. There's some great back and forth there, right? Like the barbershop scenes, the trailer at the construction site. I almost spit my drink out when he's he's walking out of there, and this is a quote from the movie, but he says, "Let the Mick play with himself," and it's just like as he's passing out the door.
Well, Charles, I don't know about you, but I just had to laugh at some parts because as a man growing up through the pre-digital age and into the digital age, there's such a stark difference between what comedy is accepted in society, between maybe different political factions or social factions. But I would just hear these casual things growing up as a man that other grown men would willingly tune into to form some type of bond. And it doesn't necessarily have to be racist. It can just be something stupid, like at the construction site where Tao's like, oh yeah, they screw me over for my car fix and now it's going to cost like $2,400. And like, it's just so weird and odd, but just unique how men find stereotypical common ground to form these bonds. And whether sometimes I also, and I will be admittedly, I'm not trying to be a hypocrite, but I've done those things before to try to be a part of a male community, whether that be someone talking about, I just did a few sets at the gym, then went to play around a couple rounds of golf, and I'd be like, yeah, me too. I just got off a stretch of doing some pull and push exercise, just dumb things that I would try to lean into to become accepted and out of my own insecurity. And I think we see that here with Tao as a character.
I think he shows that well, right? Like if you were to say that like you've never done any of these things, I would think you're lying. Like that's just society, right? Like we have to put on a mask to fit in some facet. And that like you said was masculinity, was like the boys group, the guys group. Like if you want to be in those sort of things, you just had to like convey 100%. I think that's the case. And Tao is someone who, yeah, like doesn't have any interest in any of those things, but can put on that mask to fit in, and he gets himself a job doing it. So like it works for him. But yeah, I think that's represented pretty well through Tao in this section.
All right, Charles. I don't know if you wanted to touch on anything else about the movie, what you thought about the writing or the direction.
One more thing I wanted to ask you what you thought about. What did you think about the ending song where Clint Eastwood sings?
Okay, all right. So let me give you a play-by-play of my experience here, because I'm so happy you asked this, because I really wanted to include this, and I'm very thankful for you right now. So I was sitting there, and when I heard it come on, I'm like, okay, this is kind of like a very Western sort of vibe going on, and I'm like, it kind of makes sense with, Tao driving away in the Torino, and I'm like, okay. And then I'm thinking, is that Clint? Is that fucking Clint? And, it has his gruff and it has his tone. And I'm like, just sort of like, I'm having the stank face, but not in a good way. Like kind of like I'm smelling something awful. And I think this was supposed to be good and old school country, but I gotta be honest, Charles, I think Clint fumbled the bag here with this song. It's just, I didn't have any good feelings about it.
Yeah, it was like watching someone grind down a railing, land, and then go to get off the skateboard and trip, right? Like, it was just like, I don't know why. And
my Gran Torino.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Yeah, it just kind of comes out of nowhere, and it's a little bit jarring in the ending.
It does. Maybe to our points, do you feel like Clint's just getting in his way a little bit too much coming into this ending?
I think so. And pride has been the theme here, and maybe that's coming into play on a personal level. I'm going to put this part out to Clint personally if he's listening, because I just assume he scans media for criticism and, builds off of it. I think, he's probably trying to do a mic drop, like I'm a triple threat here, right? I directed, produced, I acted, and you know what? I'm going to try singing too. And I think it missed. I think, this one didn't land, but I think that's what maybe was going on here, is like, I can do it all. I don't know. I don't have a good answer. I really don't.
Like the titular Torino, he's firing on all cylinders and he doesn't give a fuck what anyone else has to say. He probably thought this was his last movie because he looks that old.
He's actually getting fitted for that suit.
He's like, yeah, this is my late arrest attire. Clint was actually coughing up blood at that point in his life, and the team was like, yeah, that's powerful. Put that in.
This is more documentary, and we just don't realize.
No, we're not cutting. We're gonna roll. We're gonna roll it. He's like actively dying. They're like, roll. No takes. Charles, the last bit of the episode here, I think we'll just try to give a short review of the film, and then we'll move on to the last segment for the show, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to just come out and say that for me, Gran Torino, I think for about 75% of the movie was bordering on like an 8.5, sometimes closer to a 9, depending on whether or not the Mong family was involved, because I loved them so much. I think I landed on about an 8 because of some of the bruises that we've talked about so far, and maybe Clint getting a little bit too much in his way, or maybe just like we last talked about, I'm bumping the score down 2 points from a perfect because of that god-awful last closing song. But I'm at an 8 because I feel like this movie is so nuanced in the subjects that it talks about. But at the end, I just feel like the pacing, it just rips off, and I don't know. I just felt I was so connected for the longest time, and then I was kind of ripped away, and I'm looking at Clint lying there in the Jesus crucifixion form. Like, did we really just go there? But it's also at the same time so powerful that I felt conflicted. So I'm just giving it a couple knocks for those reasons. But ultimately, it's just such a great movie with timely messages, and I don't think anyone should miss this in Clint's filmography. So 8 out of 10 for me.
I'm in the same place. It's an 8 for me. It has been an 8. I think that's a spot on take. There's things I wanted in this movie. I wanted to see some closure at the end. I wanted things to slow down. Like you said, they kind of just ripped the Band-Aid off and like, here's the end. I wanted to see Sue more in the end and like how she felt about all this. And like, cause she's a pretty impactful and powerful character in the beginning. And
she motivates so much.
Yeah. And we just lose that at the end. We see her tearful in one scene and that's it. She's not even really, kind of acknowledged in the will reading just how. And I don't think that's like fair to her character at all. And we don't get a lot of closure with that. And then, like you said, the song I think kind of kills that end scene for me. that's a hard pill to swallow, honestly. After you've been
Clint's
through all
ballad.
that emotional.
Clint's ballad. It's really an old Western American lullaby. I love it.
I go to sleep to it every night.
I lay down in my crib and there's little like those little like spin like arms that you have when you're a baby.
Yeah.
There's just little Gran Torinos above that, and Clint's going, "My Gran Torino," and I'm like, and I fall asleep. Yeah, that's basically what happens.
It's a lot. It was a choice. It was a choice, and he made it. I guess I respect that. Would I have done it? I don't know. I hope I'm never in that position.
Well, I'm glad we've come to a consensus on this. I feel like we definitely throughout this episode have come to a lot of agreement on it, and I'm glad that we've had some of the takeaways, but you've definitely opened my eyes and others, so I appreciate that.
No, yeah, this was a great discussion. Sarah, and if you're listening, I love you so much.
Shout out, Sarah.
She falls asleep usually as soon as I start a movie. So the discussion portion doesn't really happen because she has like maybe the first 30 minutes of any film that we watch. She did stay awake for this, and I kind of felt bad because it made her tearful at the end. But yeah, it was a good discussion, and yeah, I saw a lot of points you brought too that I did not think about before. So good talk.
Charles, our last segment is something I like to call Double Shot, in line with our coffee theme podcast, like a double shot of espresso. It's where we talk about two movies that we'd like to, well, I should say a movie that we'd like to put up alongside as like a double feature for the movie we just talked about. For example, I would probably start the night with Gran Torino, and then I would end the evening with a movie called A Man Called Otto from 2022, which stars Tom Hanks, and it's very similar, where a crotchety old white man becomes acquainted with in this case, in A Man Called Otto, a Hispanic family. And there's some growth there, and it is a little bit white savory. So that's my double shot, A Man Called Otto. What are you thinking? And it does not have to be related at all.
I'm going to, so I'll keep it related, and I think this movie maybe fixes some of the thematic issues that I had with Gran Torino, and that is American History X, and that's heavy.
Oh, okay.
So that might be a lot for a dual feature sitting. There's a lot of emotion there. That may be like a one day, then the next day.
You have to carve out your
Yeah.
whole Sunday for emotional processing. Yeah.
But I think that movie maybe comments more on the social aspects of how the main character acts, and how that affects his life, and how he has to grow as a person in that. And both characters, right, have great prejudice, are like very flawed people. I think there's more growth in American History X. He starts from maybe a much darker place and goes to a much higher place.
Wonderful. A night of racial injustices. I champion that choice, Charles. That's a very powerful evening, but I love it. And again, I want to thank you for coming on to the show. It was a lot of fun getting to know you just a little bit better, but also being able to nerd out with you.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me. This was fantastic, and yeah, I really appreciated it.
So that wraps up the 3rd episode of our 2nd season. If you feel like it, give this movie, Gran Torino, a spin. While some of the messages in the film may not be everyone's cup of tea, we think this effort is powerful enough to leave you speechless.